Coming up, Philadelphia Eagles trade rumors heat up after 2 Eagles training camp practices. We're discussing that, plus should the Eagles target defensive tackle Christian Wilkins, who was let go by the Raiders yesterday, when healthy, one of the top defensive tackles in the game. By the way, no practice today for Philadelphia. It's an off day, but the Eagles will return to the NovaCare Complex for training camp practice number 3 tomorrow on Saturday. I have done day 1 and day 2 training camp reactions. Those videos are up on the channel. Be sure to check them out. I'm Chase Sr., by the way. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now. I hope you're all having a good Friday and you're getting ready to have a great weekend. Technically off today, so that's why I'm not in the Chat Sports studios, but we can't take any breaks during a time like this. There's too much to talk about, and we got to talk some Eagles, which is why you should subscribe to the channel. We're 7 subscribers away from 123,000 subs, and I have you covered with Eagles coverage daily right here on the channel. And it's training camp across the NFL. It's training camp for your boy. This is what I've been up to, and I'm not talking football here on the program. I'm competing in Hyrocks in November, so my training started last week. I'm 17 weeks out, and we're working. We're going to improve the form over time. We're going to get better, but here's a look at some of the workouts that are included in the Hyrocks competition. I've done a 300-day running streak. I've done a 700-day running streak. I've run a half marathon. I've done a 10K where I was, I think, 3rd overall in my age group. The last year, though, I've really put a focus on becoming more of a hybrid athlete. So running and lifting. I've been able to gain 30 pounds, a lot of that muscle to bulk up. Now it's time to work off of that foundation. And so I've really been passionate about that. Hyrocks is a global indoor fitness competition, and it combines running and functional exercises designed to test strength, endurance, and overall fitness. And so it consists of 8 1-kilometer runs. It's about 0.6 miles, each followed by a workout station, repeated 8 times in this order. So the ski erg, which is this workout that I showed you, a sled push, which I did here, sled pull, burpee broad jumps, rowing, a farmer's carry, sandbag lunges, and wall balls. So it's fun. I'm competing in this competition with my sister. We're going to do a mixed doubles. Looking forward to that. And outside of talking Eagles football, that has been something that's been occupying a lot of my time. If you have any tips, it's kind of like CrossFit to a certain degree, let me know down in the comments section. I'm open ears for all of the fitness junkies out there. All right, let's talk some birds here. Examining this Eagles roster, I really like what Howie Roseman has done this offseason. He let a lot of high-priced and older veterans go, and he has developed the youth on this talent, and the Eagles are counting on this youth talent to really develop. Philadelphia wants to let these young players make strides in their development as football players. And this team, this roster, has a lot of young pieces who are already cornerstones and who are members of that Super Bowl 59 championship team, and they have other young players who are trying to become that, and they also, of course, have bona fide stars already on this roster. And I think when you canvass Philadelphia's team right now, they have the deepest roster in the NFL, arguably the most talented roster in the NFL, and I think this is really important, given all of the different stylistically sound teams in the NFL and how different they are. The Eagles have a team that is so multiple that can win in a variety of weather conditions, win in a variety of ways. High scoring, low scoring, offense, defense, special teams. And I think those are the ingredients of a championship team. Because if you're struggling in one area or in one game you don't have something, you can rely on something else to win. That on top of a great owner, a great GM, a great coaching staff, and a really deep roster leads me to believe that, yeah, Philadelphia can repeat as Super Bowl champions. And on offense, they're set. They returned 10 of 11 starters from a team that won the Super Bowl last year. And they had the best rush game in football with the best offensive line, the best running back. And then when Jalen Hurts needed to throw it, when there was pressure on this passing game to succeed and flourish, Jalen Hurts was phenomenal. So far throughout this offseason, OTAs, mandatory minicamp, training camp, he's been on fire. in a new offense with another new offensive coordinator. He's completed like 97% of his passes. And so I'm very confident in this offense. Of course, Kevin Patullo has some pressure on him to replace Kellen Moore, but he's also been a member of this coaching staff since 2021 under Nick Sirianni. That's been a top 5, top 10 overall offense in football. And I think he is better prepared to take over the reins as an offensive play caller compared to Brian Johnson. And Nick Sirianni has evolved as a coach to better help Kevin Patullo as compared to Brian Johnson when Nick Sirianni was in the same situation a couple of years ago. So that's offense, right? Offensive line is loaded. Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, Tyler Steen, Lane Johnson from left to right. You have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, best receiver duo in the NFL. You have a top 10 tight end in Dallas Goedert. Best running back, as I mentioned, in Saquon Barkley. Jahan Dotson is a former first-round pick who's your number 3 wideout and like your 5th option on offense. And so I have confidence in this offense. I think they're going to be more balanced, and I think that they're going to throw it a little bit more, which is going to make the run game more dangerous if the Eagles are a more balanced offensive unit. But on defense, we know there are question marks there. How does this pass rush perform? Who wins the outside corner job opposite of Quinyon Mitchell? Will it be Adoree Jackson or Kelee Ringo? Who starts next to Zack Baun with Nakobe Dean hurt? Will it be the rookie Jahad Campbell? Will it be Jeremiah Trotter Jr., who has played well as a special teamer, showed flashes late last year as a linebacker? Vic Fangio absolutely loves him. You can tell he is a former All-Pro son. Who starts at safety next to Reed Blankenship? Outside of Blankenship, you have unproven, young, inexperienced players there, and I think that's a little bit of an issue for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. Can you rely on inexperienced players as the final safety valve at that third level on your defense if you're competing and contending for a championship? There are risks there. Now, I think what the Eagles are going to do, see what these young pieces can do. Scout and evaluate the existing personnel on this Eagles roster. But if there are concerns there, Vic Fangio and Howie Roseman are smart. I think that they will think about making a move if the play alongside Reed Blankenship is subpar or questionable. So it could make a lot of sense to trade for or to sign a veteran safety specifically to help this team. If you're going to go corner, Asante Samuel Jr. is still out there. If you have concerns about Kelee Ringo and Adoree Jackson, a little bit too early to have a definitive opinion on these positions, but soon, Eagles are going to have to make some decisions. And going with unproven players for a team that is looking to repeat, it's a little bit risky. That's why I hated the C.J. Gardner-Johnson trade. Yeah, you want to pay Reed Blankenship, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith. The latter two are extension eligible after this year. You got a budget for Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, but you didn't have to make a decision this offseason on C.J. Gardner-Johnson. You could have brought him back for one more year, and this wouldn't be a concern. I like Andrew Makuba. He plays a lot like C.J. Gardner-Johnson, but he's a rookie. Sidney Brown, a downhill thumper, but sometimes he's a little bit too overly aggressive, and that can cost him in coverage. That can lead to explosive, game-changing plays. That can determine a win from a loss. And so will a trade happen? Look, the ammunition is there. We know that Howie has built a great roster, but part of building a great organization and having an opportunity to go on a dynastic run is to have optionality, is to have assets. And if the Eagles want to make a trade for a player to improve their team, especially at the safety position, if they have concerns at edge, linebacker, corner, whatever, the Eagles are expected to have 13 draft picks next year, and a lot of those selections are inside the first 4 rounds. And those are the chips that the Eagles can use at their disposal to their advantage if they need to add a player this summer. And think about what Howie has done. He traded for Jahan Dotson last summer. He acquired C.J. Gardner-Johnson right before the regular season opener in 2022. The Eagles made a move for Gardner Minshew via a draft pick in 2021. They've made big offseason trades like for Darren Sproles and Darius Slay, among others. So I think Philadelphia will be patient with the development of these young players, but Howie, you already know, is going to look around, and if he needs to be aggressive, he'll pull the trigger. The key question, of course, what his tolerance for development will be, and what is Vic Fangio going to say about that, and what is his say in that matter? Because Howie will lean on Vic for defensive personnel decisions. You have to. Zack Baun with a pretty interesting tweet, covers the Eagles for PHLY. He's been covering this team for decades for multiple outlets. He said Howie Roseman will also be active with roster churn as he usually is. Howie said this: if there's an incremental difference on a player who's the 90th guy from a guy who's on the street, we're going to make that change, and we owe that to our fans. We owe that to our players. We owe that to owner Jeffrey Lurie to do whatever we can to keep improving the talent level on this team. I just love that mindset. That mindset is not the one that a lot of other GMs have, but it's the mindset that Lurie sets, that Howie follows, that Nick Sirianni agrees with. And that type of synergy within your organization is awesome. Now, as far as looking for players to trade for, if it's a trade, you would want to target a player on a team that won't be competitive. Budda Baker comes to mind if you're looking at safety, a player who can play all over the field, playing with the Arizona Cardinals. Jonathan Gannon entering a big year, former Eagles DC. But I think they're going to be somewhat competitive. And so I would say that Budda Baker, a little bit unlikely. The rumors on him were hot a couple of years ago when the Eagles were looking for a safety. But the thing is, he was going to enter the final year of his contract this year, and then he signed an extension in 2024. But if the Cardinals don't think they're going to be competitive, that might be a trade around the NFL trade deadline, depending on where they're at, because he's an expensive player. If they're going to rebuild, why have an older safety when you can get some draft compensation in return? A player who intrigues me is a player like Grant Delpit of the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are not going to be good this year. They have a carousel at quarterback. That organization is always a circus. There's a lot of chatter that they are hot and heavy on the possibility of drafting Arch Manning and maybe hiring Nick Saban if things don't go well after this year to kind of just tear it down and rebuild. Justin Simmons is a player who, obviously, I've talked a lot about here on the show. The Eagles could sign him for a very affordable price in NFL free agency. And he's a four-time second-team All-Pro. He knows this defense, played under Vic Fangio, played under Christian Parker, has good ball skills. At the very least, he is not the A-plus player that he once was, but is he a B-minus guy with a ton of experience who is a great team leader, a former team captain who would be great in this locker room, who gives Philadelphia experience, and he's cheap? It makes too much sense. Last year, he struggled a little bit, but for the first time in his career, he played in a new defense, and that Falcons defense was a joke. Last in sacks, last in sack percentage, and they gave up, I think, the most passing touchdowns in the NFL. Julian Blackmon is a player who I like, but he's off the market. He signed with the Saints after Tyrann Mathieu retired earlier this week. So that is something to keep in mind if you're Philadelphia. Topic number 2 here. I've just gotten this question from a lot of fans who watch the show. Chase, Christian Wilkins is out there, let go by the Raiders yesterday. Should the Eagles go after him? I got to give a shout out to my coworker, Mitchell Renz, host of the Raiders Report, closing in on 200,000 subscribers. He reported a month ago that there was a disagreement between the Raiders organization, who wanted Christian Wilkins to undergo another Jones fracture, and Wilkins' camp, who, after one Jones fracture surgery, did not want to have to get another surgery, wanted to play through it and play through the pain to see if he could be available for Pete Carroll, John Spytek, and this new regime in 2025. And so Mitch was on this. I was in his wedding back a few weeks ago, and I remember us talking about it, and he talked about this on the show. He was on this a long while ago. And then that ended up being the reason why the Raiders released him. Now, here at Chat Sports, like, I've broken some stories from time to time. Mitch has broken some stories from time to time. We have sources, but I consider myself a talk show host, an NFL analyst. I have opinions, and I like to share those opinions. I have bold takes. I really like sharing my analysis, but when we're given information, we're going to report that. For instance, at the NFL Combine 2 years ago, from a source, I was told that the Eagles really like Cooper DeJean, that they invited him into Philadelphia for a top 30 visit, and that was the first top 30 visit that the Eagles offered Cooper DeJean. He had not been offered a top 30 visit by any other team. So I got that information, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to break that story. That tweet picked up like 1 million views on X, and what ended up happening? Eagles drafted him in the second round. They moved up for him. Jeffrey Lurie said, I couldn't sleep after night one because I thought another team was going to draft you. And last year, he was a focal point of this Eagles defense. Now, going back to Christian Wilkins, this story broken by Mitch a month ago, released by the Raiders yesterday, after one injury-shortened season with the team, he signed a 4-year, $110 million deal with $57.5 million in guaranteed money in March of 2024. But he suffered a Jones fracture in his left foot during Week 5 of the season against the Broncos that limited him to 5 games. He underwent surgery, but his recovery faced a lot of setbacks. That can happen for a guy who's well over 300 pounds. And so that required a walking boot again in 2025. He posted a picture on social media, I think a month or two ago. He was in a walking boot that raised some red flags, and the Raiders placed him on PUP before training camp. Head coach Pete Carroll described his rehab as, quote, challenging, and the timeline uncertain. The Raiders voided $35.2 million in remaining guaranteed money, citing disagreements over his rehab approach, specifically his refusal to undergo a second surgery recommended by the team. And so Wilkins fired a grievance with the NFL Players Association, NFLPA in hot water right now, on July 24th, after he was released, to contest the voided guarantees. Now, he earned $49.7 million for the 5 games that he played with the Raiders, including a $24 million signing bonus and a restructured $20.5 million roster bonus. But this is a player, when healthy, who is superb. Former first-round pick by the Dolphins in 2019, standout 2023 with 9 sacks that led to him getting paid. In his career, 372 tackles, 22.5 sacks, 56 quarterback hits, over 86 games. He's really good against the run. But his release and the nagging foot injury concerns are problematic, and they raise concerns about his NFL future. So a valuable player when healthy, but this is also a messy situation because of the grievance process. There will be a legal battle between the Raiders and Christian Wilkins. Might involve a hearing, and that'll determine if he recovers those voided guarantees. Now, as far as the Eagles go, I think they're good here. Jalen Carter missed the first 2 practices with a shoulder injury, but the Eagles didn't put him on PUP or the non-football injury list. He is one of the top defensive tackles in the game. He might be number 1 if you think that Chris Jones, is getting older. But it's really like Chris Jones, Dexter Lawrence, Jalen Carter, Jeffrey Simmons, and Christian Wilkins when healthy, who might be the top 5 defensive tackles in the game. But the Eagles have Jalen Carter. Jordan Davis is slimmed up, best shape of his life. He looks phenomenal. Hasn't been this light since his sophomore year at Georgia. He was pudgy then. He's slimmed up now, and he could have a breakout year. It takes defensive tackles sometimes a couple of years. And this could be the breakout year for Jordan Davis, who from the midway point on last year was really good, and in the playoffs, one of the highest graded defensive tackles in the game. Moro Ojomo, I think, could be a stud. Ty Robinson can play end in a 3-4 or defensive tackle. So I know that, we always talk about how Howie can pull off highway robbery and how he outsmarts so many other general managers. In this case, though, it's going to come down to the medicals. with Christian Wilkins. And if the Raiders were saying, yeah, you got to get another surgery on this Jones fracture, he'd be out the whole year. You sign him and he tries to play through the pain, but he's hurt. He's out for the year. And so I'm just not willing to go that route to answer a lot of the questions that I've gotten. All right, thanks to everybody for tuning into the show. A beautiful Friday, July 25th. Eagles back on the practice field tomorrow for training camp practice number 3. We'll react to it. Be on the lookout for some more coverage. Thanks for watching this week. Thanks for watching every single day. As always, go Birds. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button.